that you never knew. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
So we say, Jesus, you are good. You have done it all. Jesus, 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 hey, Jesus, hey, Omema, you have done it all, you have done it all, you have done it all, Omema, yeah, 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 yeah. You have done enough. You have done enough. Jesus, you are good. 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 Jesus, 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 Jesus. Chim, 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 chim up. Chim, 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 chim up. Ha. Chim, 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 chim up. Chim, 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 chim up. Jesus, your highest praise.
Faithful through the ages, God of Abraham, you're the God of covenant and faithful promises. Time and time again, you have proven you'll do just what you said. Though the storms may come and the winds may blow, I'll remain steadfast and let my heart learn when you speak a word, it will come to pass. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness to
Yes, I'll still bless you in the middle of the storm, in the middle of my trial. I'll still bless you in the middle of the road when I don't know where to go. I'll still bless you in the middle of my storm, in the middle of my trial. I'll still bless you when I'm in the middle of the road and I don't know which way to go. I'll still bless you. I'll still bless you. I'll still bless you. Oh, I've got a reason to bless you, yeah. I've got a reason to bless you. I've got a reason to bless your name. You've been faithful. You've been faithful. You've been so good to me. You've been so good. Come on, just lift up your praise. Just lift up your worship to Him. You've been so good. You've been so good. Let this house, this body be filled with your praise. Be filled with your praise. We bless your name. I'll still bless you. I'll still bless you. I'll still bless you. I'll still bless you. Great is your faithfulness. Great is your faithfulness to me. Great is your faithfulness. From the rising sun to the setting sun, I will praise your rising sun. From the rising sun to the setting sun, I will praise your name. From the rising sun to the setting sun, I will praise your name. Great is your faithfulness to me.
Et quand l'Esprit de vérité sera venu, il vous conduira dans la vérité tout entière, car il ne parlera pas de lui-même, mais tout ce qu'il aura entendu, il le dira. Il vous annoncera les choses à venir, il manifestera ma gloire, car il puisera dans ce qui est en moi, et vous l'annoncera. Ainsi la gloire du Père se révèle par l'Esprit. La gloire et la puissance de Jésus se révèlent par son Esprit. Ainsi quelqu'un qui a cru le verra. Alléluia.
Esprit de Dieu, nous avons besoin de toi. Souffle, Holy Spirit. Quand il descend, oui, tout s'arrête. Il y a transfert entre ciel et terre. Quand il descend, l'atmosphère change. Il y a transfert entre ciel. Quand il descend, oui, tout s'arrête.
Tout s'arrête. Il y a transfert
Entre ciel et terre.
ciel et terre.
Quand il descend,
Il descend.
l'atmosphère change.
L'atmosphère change.
Il y a
transfert
entre ciel et terre.
ciel et terre.
Il descend.
Il descend.
Oui, tout s'arrête.
Tout s'arrête.
Testing. Testing. Testing 1, 2, 3. Essayez. 1, 2, 3. Essayez. Marche-t-il? OK. Merci.
Il est là pour changer, il est là pour guérir, il est là pour
C'est bon? Does it work? Marche?
Un autre conférencier gosse. Je rappelle que si vous n'êtes pas tout à fait à l'aise avec l'anglais, on a la traduction simultanée, mais ça prend les écouteurs. D'accord? À partir de votre téléphone. Et si vous avez besoin, il y a, à l'arrière, on peut vous arranger cela, mais ça prend les écouteurs de vos téléphones, vos écouteurs. D'accord? Donc, je vais prier, si vous voulez bien. Seigneur, nous voulons te bénir et te rendre grâce. We want to give you thanks for what you're doing. Thank you for Gus here. Thank you for the opportunity that we have to come and listen on how we can mix faith and science, how we can mix the Bible and science, Father, and still be faithful believers. Donc nous te rendons grâce pour cela, Seigneur. Merci. Conduis encore notre orateur et guide-nous encore ce soir. Sois béni, mon Dieu, et sois glorifié. Dans le nom de Jésus, Amen.
Amen.
You're up.
Thank you, Pastor.
You're welcome.
It's great for me to be here tonight again. My wife is with me over at the book table, and so she accompanies me when it's local, or when we go to a nice place like Australia or something. But so we're going to continue on what we did a month ago, and I have a number of presentations, short presentations I want to give you, and then I want to open it up for questions. I already have two questions. One was on the Shroud of Turin. The Shroud of Turin. It's not really a creation evolution question, but we're going to address that because that's very interesting. As well as the Big Bang. Okay? There's cards at the back. If you want to write on a card your question, you can do so on the card, or raise your hand when you at some time when we're open for questions. Okay? Ready, everybody? All right. So can you project? Are you projecting? Very good. So I speak for Creation Ministries International. I've been doing this for almost 13 years, and I've done over 250 events in that period of time. So I've done every province, including a ship around Australia. So this, I'm just going to give you briefly why this topic is important. And it's a shortened version of a talk. The Bible tells us that at the beginning God made everything in 6 days. These are 6 normal days. These are not 6 eons, 6 million years, 6 billion years, or anything. There are 6 normal days. On the first day, God defines how long a day is. Light, darkness, day, night, evening, morning. It's a normal day. And that's how it has been all throughout history. Up until the mid-1800s, every Christian and Jew accepted a literal creation event. On the other hand, about 150 years ago, there was a guy by the name of Charles Darwin who came along and said, no, we don't need God. We can explain everything, all of life, without God. But before him, there was a gentleman by the name of Charles Lyell. Charles Lyell was a lawyer who became a geologist, says, listen, not 6,000 years like the Bible gives us, as long as you need. Millions, billions, no problem. You have all the time in the world. And so, combining the deep time, the long ages, and evolutionary history, we have this. We have the idea that's propagated in everybody's mind that the universe started with the Big Bang 13.8 billion years ago, and that the Earth formed it became an Earth about 4.5 billion years ago, and that life came on the Earth through various stages and evolution progress until voila, we are here today at the end of billions of years of geological and biological evolution. Unless you've been dead for the last 25 years, you know this already, right? It's in schools, university, media, social media, everybody. Okay. So what is the impact of this on Christianity? The impact has been devastating. When they did a survey recently, they said, ask the questions. We have some of these pamphlets. If you ever want to get one, they're free. They're at the book table. Right? Why are people leaving the church? Christianity is losing a lot of people, especially young people, especially people who grow up in the church. And there's a reason for that. Okay? So 62% of Americans and Canadians say they believe that we evolved from an ape-like ancestor. That we split off from chimps about 6 million years ago. We went, and of course the last time I was talking about that human evolution. All right, so many Christians believe that our ancestors were apes. But when they ask Canadian young people across all Christian denominations, they indicated they strongly agree that the teachings of science, read evolution, and religion, i.e. the Bible, often ultimately conflict with each other. So they are at war. And so young people, they have 75 hours a week of evolution and 1 hour, maybe a year, on creation. So what's going to happen? And many churches won't even talk about creation. Okay, so people are snowed under. They don't have answers. They don't know what to do. I believe the Bible, but I believe that God also used evolution. What's the answer to that? Well, that's where Creation Ministries comes in. Answers in Genesis and Creation Ministries International, we were both the same organization at one time. And there's other organizations. So we're in 7 countries. We have PhD scientists on staff. I'm not one of them. But they look at all the what's out in the scientific world. They write books, the DVDs, and you have a whole collection of books there. I know the pastor has bought a number of them, and they're excellent sources. I'm what they call a remote speaker. I live in Montreal, Pierrefonds, and they just give me an itinerary. Go last week, not last weekend, but the weekend before, I was in Saskatoon. Next 3 weeks, I'm going to be in Eastern Ontario. In May, I'll be in British Columbia. In September, I'll be in Ontario again. Then I'm going to go to Prince Edward Island. All over the country. And it's a big country. Okay, anyway, so we're helping the churches to deal with this problem because many of them are losing people. And they're saying, forget the Bible. It's stupid. Why should I believe? In the beginning, God created? No. In the beginning, the Big Bang. A lot of people believe. So we have a website, creation.com. Malheureusement, c'est seulement... Actuellement, il y a des hautes langues aussi, okay? Chinois, français, espagnol, okay? Okay, so we also have a sign up for our newsletter. If you like that, put up your hand. My wife will give you a clipboard. You can put your name. Anybody interested in signing up? Levez les mains. Okay, we have a customer over here. Good. All right. All right. So you need to remember that in the time of Jesus, when he was talking to the people, he accepted everything as literal. Adam and Eve is literal. The flood is literal. Sodom and Gomorrah, Jonah and the flood. These are all real history. Everybody believed that. The Jews believed that. The apostles, Jesus taught that and believed that. The apostles believed this. And the church believed this until about 150 years ago, which happened to be when Lyell and Darwin came along and said, no, that's not true. And so what's the importance of this? What does it matter if God used evolution or God used creation? Well, the big issue is Adam. The central point is, was there a real Adam? If there was no Adam, humans did not fall from our perfect state. We did not fall into sin. And that sin did not bring death. So you have initial created perfect, Adam perfect, Adam rebelled against God, sin happened, death happened. That is why we die. So if we are dying, how can we have life? Well, the Bible tells us that there is only one source of a life everlasting, and that is Jesus, right? Jesus took our punishment on the cross. He died for our sins that we may have life. This is Gospel 101. But many people don't seem to connect Adam to Jesus. And I think atheists sometimes understand that. Now I'm going to read it, and this is an atheist by the name of Adam Zindler who said to a Christian, Dr. William Lane Craig, he says, if there never was an Adam and Eve, there never was an original sin. And if there never was an original sin, there's no need of salvation. And if there is no need of salvation, there is no need of a Savior. And I submit that puts Jesus, historical or otherwise, into the ranks of the unemployed. I think that evolution is absolutely the death knell of Christianity. He is correct. If you don't have an Adam, you don't need a Jesus. Go home, you have no faith. It's pointless. Does that make sense? Comprends-tu? Comprenez-vous? Okay, good. All right. So, also when you think about it, if you look at the Gospel of Luke and you look at the genealogies, the genealogy of Jesus, of his parents, go all the way back to Adam. But if there was no Adam, then who's Jesus related to in the beginning? Nobody? Or an ape man? Or what? Okay, so these are very big questions. So the only view that gives you a real historical Adam is one that places Adam about 6,000 years ago. And of course, creation was about 6,000 years ago. So that's what they call the young earth creation view. We call it the biblical creation view, but that's the young earth creation view. 6,000 years ago, God made everything, Adam and Eve, and then 1,600 years later, there was a global flood. So there are two things that are very important: original creation and the global flood. Those are very, very important in Christian theology. If those are lost, then Christian theology is in big trouble. So there was a podcast, Frank Turek, I don't know if you've ever seen these guys, Frank Turek and Dr. William Lane Craig. Dr. William Lane Craig holds 2 PhDs, one in philosophy and one in theology, so he's a very educated man. And he was asked a question about young earth creationism, about the 6,000-year view. He said this: the sooner the Christian community gets rid of young earth creationism, the better. This is an embarrassment for the Christian faith that is creating enormous obstacles to Christian belief among scientifically educated people. The universe is not, and the earth is not 6,000 years old, and there's no reason biblically to think that it is, and therefore we really need to shed ourselves of this as a Christian community. So according to Dr. William Lane Craig, what the church has believed for thousands of years, scrap it, put it in the dump. Why? Because he finds it embarrassing. He doesn't like it. Because in the scientific world, yes, they don't agree with this. So he says, let's get rid of all Christian doctrine. But he also later on says, the real elephant in the room here is the flood. It's not Adam and Eve, it's the flood. Because it is scientifically indefensible to think that within the span of human history, that all the world's terrestrial life, that's life on land, was wiped out in the flood except for that aboard the ark. That is indefensible scientifically, historically, linguistically. So according to a top Christian apologist, you need to get rid of creation, a 6-day creation. What else will that mean? You'll also have to get rid of Adam and Eve, the Garden of Eden. You'll have to get rid of the fall. You'll have to get rid of Cain and Abel and Enoch and Lamech and Methuselah. And in fact, you have to get rid of Noah. You have to get rid of the flood. You have to get rid of it all. Wait a minute, this guy's a Christian. And he's telling you those first 11 chapters of Genesis, dump. Wow. Okay. So that creates a real problem for Christians. Not only do they get it from the atheist and the secularist, you guys are all stupid, but they also get it from Christians themselves. You guys are stupid for believing what the Bible teaches. Well, it's a big problem, isn't it? I mean, who then do you look to? Who's telling us the truth? I would say that every scheme that attempts to force billions of years of evolution onto the Genesis narrative denies that Adam's sin brought death into the world and thus renders meaningless Jesus' death as the payment for Adam's sin and for ours also. Does that follow? Everybody understand that? No Adam, you don't need Jesus, nothing. Unfortunately, there are quite a number of people who are doing just that. Okay? So let me talk about theistic evolution. Theistic evolution is the idea, well, couldn't God have used evolution? Couldn't God have used evolution? And so the answer usually was, well, God could do whatever he wanted, right? It means God, he could do whatever he wanted. But I've come to the conclusion that the answer to that question is no. God could not have used evolution. Not that he isn't capable, he just would never have done that. Because in doing so, if he uses evolution, he is no longer going to be God. Let me explain that. If you agree that God used evolution in those billions of years, you would have to say that God is incompetent. You know, we humans have been able to, in the last 200 years, been able to put men around the moon, several men and women around the moon and on the moon several times. We're able to make airplanes that will fly around the world. We've been able to decipher our own genetic code, and we have been able to edit our own genetic code. And yet, you know, the design of every creature is in the genetic code. So how come within 200 years humans have figured this out, yet it took God 1 billion years to figure this out? Is he almighty? Is he all-knowing? Why did he take so long? Why would he have spent 1 billion years doing what we could have do in 200? Right? But also, that would mean that if evolution is true, that all of these animals, whatever kind of animals, whether it be reptiles or dinosaurs or birds or proto-humans or humans, there would literally have been quadrillions of people and animals, etc., or are all just wasted just so that we could be here today, right? That would make God very cruel and wasteful. Billions and billions and billions of animals and people just so he could say, voila, I have made humans. Well, you wasted a lot of things in the meantime. Why? Also, evolution, by its very definition, excludes God. And it is unguided. It is nothing guiding evolution. It's not supposed to happen. It just so happens because of natural processes. Well, how could God guide an unguided process? This is nonsense. How can you guide an unguided process? Right? You don't need God for that because God wouldn't have been needed. Right? Also, people have said that one of the reasons they became an atheist was because of evolution. Evolution is what has been leading people away from God, saying, I don't need God because evolution can explain it all. Why would then God use a process that ultimately leads people to deny he even exists? It doesn't make any sense. Why would God put a process like that? Okay, well, it doesn't make any sense. Why would God, right? Lead to his own existence. He's designing himself out of business, right? That doesn't seem like with God. It also tells us that God did not start with a very good world. In Genesis, we read that every day God had said it was good. It was very good. But evolution says, no. It was just very simple, and then that died out, so the next thing could live, then that died out. It wasn't good at all. It was all about death and disease and suffering over billions of years. It wasn't a good world. So why would God have said, I made a good world, and yet have used a very bad, cruel, wasteful process? It wasn't very good. Also, the Bible tells us that God created humans in his image. Well, if we are descended from apes, an ape-like creature, exactly what image does God have? Does God have the image of an ape? Right? Whose image are we in then? Image of an ape or image of God? They're not the same. Okay? So why would God use an ape as a prototype for us? also makes it very, God is unable to communicate clearly. Even though God literally wrote on the 10 Commandments, 6 days, I created in 6 days, not enough. God isn't clear enough. And all the Genesis chapter, no, that's not clear enough, God. You got to do something more so we can understand you. God has made it very clear. He created everything in 6 days. The fact is that people don't want to believe that. That's something else. But God himself is very clear how he created. Also, God then doesn't do miracles, because the entire event of creation is a series of miracles. God spoke, it came into being. There are no natural processes here. Okay? This is God speaking, and so people say the Bible isn't the Bible isn't a book of science. Yeah? So what? Supernatural events are not natural events. They're not scientifically explained. So, according to some, like Dr. Hugh Ross, God can't do miracles. Which basically, you certainly can't create the universe. Then I guess, what about turning water into wine? What about raising the dead? What about himself coming to life? That's a miracle. Well, if God doesn't do miracles, then Jesus isn't raised either. Right? It also ends up meaning you can't trust what he says. In fact, that's what they're claiming. Don't listen to God's word. No. You can't understand it. I will tell you how to read it. Okay? I will tell you what it means. And it doesn't mean what you think. It means something else. Okay? Also, what did God give as a mandate to Adam and Eve? The first humans, Adam and Eve. What did he say to them? He says, I want you to multiply and subdue the earth. In other words, you don't have any kids now, but I want you to have lots of kids. And I want them to have lots of kids. But if evolution is true, okay, if evolution is true, that makes sense to you? I look at that face there, right? But that's what he said, God to reproduce and subdue, fill the earth with humans. Take over this planet, you're in charge of it. But if evolution is true, then 99.9% of all the things that ever lived have already died out. Have already been lost. But what's God asking Adam to do? Repopulate the earth? That doesn't make any sense, right? If billions and billions of creatures already died, Adam and Eve, okay, you got a lot of work ahead of you to repopulate the earth, right? Also, God had said to Adam and Eve, you have dominion over the birds of the sky, the fish of the sea, and the animals on the land. You're in charge of all of these. But according to evolution, 99.9% of all the creatures that ever lived are dead. And God is saying, the leftovers you look after. Right? So God gave Adam and Eve dominion over the remaining 0.1%. It's like looking after the zoo after all the animals are dead. Right? It doesn't make any sense. But I can tell you that the God of theistic evolution is not the God of the Bible. Definitely not the God of the Bible. Because our God is good and holy and is not wanting any to perish. And yet the God of theistic evolution has been perishing people for millions and billions of years. It's not the same God. It's a false God. So a lot of Christians need to wake up and say, wait a minute, those who are telling us that theistic evolution is what God did, I say, that's exactly what God did not do. You're advocating a false God. And the first of the 10 Commandments is, you shall have no other gods before me. And why did Israel, the nation, get crushed time and time and time again? Because they kept chasing after other gods. They refused to continue to worship the Lord who made the heavens and the earth. So we need to be very careful that the God of theistic evolution is not the God of the Bible. It is a false God. And those who are advocating theistic evolution are false prophets. And we should not be listening to them. In fact, we should be calling them out and saying, you're not telling us the truth about God. One of the greatest scientists who ever lived, Sir Isaac Newton, wrote a book called Principia, about 16, something like that. this was a classic work on mathematics about the sun and the moon and all the planets, how they work mathematically. He had to co-invent calculus in order to work out all this, how this all worked. And after all of this work, he wrote at the end, he says, this most beautiful system of the sun, planets, and comets could only proceed from the counsel and dominion of the intelligent and powerful, of an intelligent and powerful being. Sir Isaac Newton understood by everything that had been created, the wonderful world it created, he realized the only explanation is God made this. Okay. So what about the science? Now, a lot of people get hung up on the science, okay? I will tell you this. After looking at this, been doing this for like over 40 years, you will not win on science. That's not how it's going to work. There is no amount of evidence, scientific evidence, will be enough to convince those people who reject God. It's impossible. Because it doesn't work on the scientific fact level. It doesn't matter how many facts. What about this? What about that? What about that? It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work on the fact level. It works on the paradigm level, the worldview level. And the evolutionists, their worldview has many, many pillars. They have many, many pillars. So even if you knock out one of the pillars, you think you've got it, they got lots more to go on. They claim that we have mountains of evidence. It's got many. So you have your little thing, which you claim is absolute proof. They said, doesn't matter. Even if you take one out, we have 100 more pillars that supports our worldview. So it's not going to work on the scientific level. It works on the idea that people have to be open to God first. It's a spiritual question. It was never a scientific question. And if you get, I know myself, I love the science stuff, I like arguing about the science stuff, but that's not where the argument is. It's at the spiritual level. Even Charles Darwin himself, he had a master's degree in theology from Cambridge University. If anybody should know about God, it would have been Charles Darwin. And he said, my theory of natural selection, I want God to have nothing to do with it. Why? He hated God. And although it's not very specifically said, and one of the possible reasons is he had a 10-year-old daughter who died. And you can imagine that a lot of people, when they go through tragedy like this, and it's awful, okay, who do they blame? God. And therefore, God, I want you out of my life. I don't want anything to do with you, because look what you did. Right? And so his theory is atheistic. It's an atheistic theory. You'll never, no person who believes in evolution is ever going to, or secular is going to accept God. But you need to understand that when science, there are two perspectives on science. The modern view is that of how the natural universe works. It deals with how everything works, whether it be chemistry or physics or geology. People want to know how things work. Okay, that's part of what science is. You have all these ologies that we go through. But the fathers of modern science, Newton, Kepler, Bacon, and Pasteur, and all these people, they understood a different picture. They understood that God had created the entire universe with design and purpose and intention and structure and order and mathematics. And they figured that if God had done this, then we humans could try to figure out what he did. Kind of a reverse engineering. You know, when you see something, that's what I love to do. I love to take things apart. When I was 5 years old, I had a train set for Christmas. Goes around the track. Well, after 100 to go around, it's kind of boring. So I figured what I'm going to do is figure out how it works. So I took it apart. Right? It's got a little motor there, and a little electricity. Oh, well, okay. Right? And it worked. It's fantastic. And I almost got it all back together, except for a few pieces, but anyway. And so I figuring out how things work, well, that's what science is, figuring out how things work. But the fathers of modern science understood that science came from God, not from nothing. Atheism will never give you science. Because atheism has no reason for believing that there's structure and order and meaning in the universe. It's all for no reason whatsoever. Okay? All right, to move things along here. There are two aspects of science. One is the empirical science. This is the type of science that you can do in a laboratory. You can test it. You can observe it. Anybody go to any science in university or high school? Right? Anything? Well, that's empirical observational science. You have a hypothesis. You develop a theory. You do a test. You see what results. You then modify your test to see what results, and you do it over and over again. Eventually says, this is how it works. Fantastic. Not a problem. But can you do that in the past? You cannot do that in the past. You can only do it on the present. And so anything related to history is not the same type of science. It's called historical science or simply history. And you have a different set of rules. You cannot do experiments in the past. Okay? So, and then of course lastly is forensic science. Forensic science kind of puts the two together, where you have physical evidence like DNA and bones and fingerprints, etc. And then the other aspect is on a scenario, a story. How do you make sense of the evidence? In order to do this properly, everybody has to have what they think explanation. How do you explain this evidence? So for example, you may have seen this already. I happen to have a number of things. One is a piece of amber with an insect in it. Okay? Now we can put it in the lab, we can test it. It is an insect and it is amber. Okay? At least I hope it's amber because I paid for it. Anyway, actually there's a lot of fraud. In Taiwan, they have big pieces of amber with lizards in it, etc. Oh, it just looks exactly like this. It's fake. How can you tell? Well, very hard to tell because it's amber. It's just pre-sap. You melt it, put an insect in it, let it cool. There you go. 60 million years old. Okay. Nobody could tell. Okay. So, all right. So the empirical stuff is, yes, this is amber, this is an insect. How and when it formed, that's the question, isn't it? How long does it take to form this? Take millions of years? Does it take 2 hours? I don't know. Right? How long does amber take to form? Well, we could do experiments and find out. Okay? So, here we have just an example of this, how it works. So you have a courtroom, a gun has been fired, somebody shot, bullet is in that person. Okay? These are empirical stuff. You can bring it to a lab. Yes, this is a gun, this is a fingerprint, this is a bullet. Nobody argues about that because it's testable. But now, both sides are asking the question, explain what happened here. Explain the evidence. Right? How did the bullet from this gun happen to get in that guy? Okay? Well, both sides argue, and you have to listen to all sides, and after a while you think, I'd go with the one on the right. Maybe you go with the one on the left. Anyway, so that's what the lawyers get paid for, trying to convince you. And that's the way science should work. Give me an explanation and let's wait, okay? Because we can't test it. Now, on our creation website, we have an article called 101 Evidences for a Young Earth and the Universe. Okay, so when you look at these, it'll give you some idea of all the evidence that is out there. I would say there are more evidences for young universe than for old. One of them that gives old is radiometric dating, and we'll talk about that a bit later. Okay? And there's many. We don't have time for this. You could ask questions on it if you want, but I will say this. Dinosaurs are supposed to have died out 65 million years ago. Right? You heard that, Jurassic Park. Everybody heard that. Okay. Did they? How would we know? Is anybody there? That's just the story that some people, one side is saying. What evidence do we have that dinosaurs are recent, are modern? Well, that's a good question. Well, one of the evidences is organic material. This is red blood. Now, this is a very recent one. I forget the date on that. It's like 20 2025 or 2026. Okay, so 2025. Okay, so what they found was endogenous biomaterials. Now, the animal's obviously dead, but these bones were not fossilized. They weren't rock, because you can't dig in organic material out of a rock. Okay, so these were what was called I think it was Edmontosaurus? Edmontosaurus, right? Fossil bone. Okay, so obviously they were able to extract this, and it was original biomaterials that had not fully degraded, was dead. And that's why it's a shocker. Because as we know in science, that when a creature dies, it starts to decay right away. Nothing can stop it. You might slow it down by reducing oxygen, but then it still decays. It gives off methane gas. You can't stop it. Okay? So how could it last 65 million years? How could it last 65 million years? Well, it can't. Nobody knows. Now, we know about forensic science. People have tested this. How do things die? How fast do they die? What happens when they die, etc.? What animals die? It's been tested up and down, everything. And then we know exactly. How can it be in 66 million year old bones? Well, maybe one of the explanations is it's not 66 million years old. Okay. Now they found over 60 dinosaur remains, and the rest, over 132 peer-reviewed published reports of million-year-old organic remains, of organic remains in million-year-old bones. Not all from dinosaurs. You know, years ago, like 20, 30 years ago, nobody would look for this. Why? Because if they died out 65 million years ago, there should be no organic material left. Until 2005, when somebody started finding it and thought, well, they first rejected her, saying, this is not dinosaur. But now they realize, hey, we can find it. And they're finding it everywhere. Wait a minute. That would suggest that dinosaurs are not millions of years old. As long as you're willing to accept the fact that that's a possibility. All right, last thing for this talk, we're going to have, so one of the resources, Creation Magazine. This is something we highly recommend people. It's in English, I'm afraid, right? It comes out 4 times a year. You subscribe to it, just like a cell phone plan. I tell you, if you're going to get any resource, get this, because you have new stuff every 3 months. And it's only $9.50 every month, every 3 months. Not every month, every 3 months. So $38 a year. You get a physical magazine, hard copy. You have several at the back. You get digital copies, so you can read it on a computer or a tablet. You also have back issue. We can give you, if you sign up tonight, you get a free back issue, and you also get a free video tonight. If anybody's interested, if you're interested, you want to raise your hand. My wife will hand out a clipboard. If not, you can see the clipboard after. It's at the desk there. Okay. And it's a form. You got to tear off payment information on one side, and payment information on the other side. Personal information, payment information. Other resources, this is the most popular book, 60 the most often asked questions on creation and evolution. If you know the answer to this question, including some of the Big Bang, okay, that is an excellent resource. So it's like pull it out of the shelf when you have a question about that. This will give you a lot of answers. Something more in-depth, a Genesis commentary. I believe, Pastor, you have that? Yeah. There's also a teaching series on DVDs with a printable study guide. There's also children's materials, and there's also for the sciences. Sciences, anybody in university or high school who wants this, this is the science stuff. This is our PhD scientists that put stuff together to look at what is claimed to be strong for evolution is actually weak in our view. There's also a DVD that goes with that, and if you buy both, you get a discount. Voila. And we didn't bring the library pack. Anyways, interested in library pack, let me know. I'll get it to Pastor at some point, have them at home. I didn't bring some. We also have a conference in Muskoka in August. They have wonderful speakers there. I'll be giving a couple of talks. So, great. Okay, that's it. All right. All right, are there any questions? Avez-vous des questions? Okay, Luke?
She was teaching us about
They don't. They don't see the evidence. Why? Because they've been programmed not to see it. Okay? They've been, so anytime it's literally a programming. The reason why 99% of scientists or biology scientists believe in evolution is because that's all they've been taught. Nobody, where would you go to have somebody teach about creation? Never, nowhere. There's a few universities in the States that have some creation programs, but certainly not in any Canadian Christian university. They're a theistic evolutionist, right? They're told that God used evolution. So why would they have a question that anybody come and talk about creation or anything related to science, right? When was the last time you had a debate, you heard a debate about evolution or creationism? Now there are a few. The last time I was involved in one was at McGill in the early 1990s between Dr. Dwayne Gish and Dr. Graham Bell, actually related to the telephone guy, right? It was 1,200 people came out, and it was a fantastic debate. Okay? But you don't see these debates. In fact, evolutionists are saying, don't debate creationists. They say, don't debate creationists. Do you know why? Because if you debate a creationist, you bring them up to your level. They have to stay down at this level. Don't ever allow them to have a voice. And so whenever you debate anybody, they're not going to let you have a creationist will not get a hearing. Simply because you have to consider them as at the bottom of the barrel. Unfortunately, that's the reality. When I debate people online, 9 out of 10 comments are insults. That's how they roll. They got you people. In fact, Dr. James Tour, who was a nanotechnologist, the guy's brilliant, origin of life researcher. He says he debated people at Harvard and other top-line universities. He says there's one thing. Maybe I mentioned this last time. One thing that they allowed to call you in university is you can't call you a whole lot of other names. I can call you the worst name is a creationist. If somebody calls you a creationist, that means that they spit on you. You're not even worth considering, right? But I will mention something. If I go back here for a second, you know that. Sorry, I got rid of my talk here. I want to show you something. You know, many people don't consider creation scientists as real scientists. They would want to say to them that they are, they don't do real science. So I showed you this article that came from Science. 3 of the scientists are creationists on this, including one that works for Creation Ministries International. Okay. Now he went through the University of Manchester, published it out of there, right? So he gets his research published. But these guys, scientists, can do science. They can do the work. Okay. So there's a lot of bigotry and prejudice. C'est la vie. You know? What can you do? Okay.
Je vais poser une question, mais en français.
OK, peux-tu traduire pour moi? Non? Oh, come on, aidez-moi!
Moi, c'était par rapport à toutes les recherches qui sont faites sur Mars.
So, about all the research done on planet Mars.
Oh, Mars, OK.
Oui.
Mars.
Par exemple, on cherche des traces de la vie, de savoir s'il y avait de la vie humaine, de la vie, même de la vie microbiologie, là, des insectes. Est-ce que c'est compatible avec la parole de Dieu, de savoir s'il y a vraiment de la vie? Parce que si c'est juste la terre où Dieu a créé, est-ce qu'on peut dire que c'est compatible, même les recherches qu'ils font?
So she's asking, as the researchers are trying to find a trace of life or whether it was conditioned, insects and stuff like that, everything that we can be found out that proves life. Is that compatible with the Bible, with the creation of God, or how should we handle it?
I think the question is, if we find life outside of the earth, would the Bible be okay with that? Okay. Well, First of all, that's a hypothetical question because we've not found anything. But the second thing is that the Bible tells us very explicitly He made the earth to be inhabited by humans. It was specifically. In fact, that's the first thing that you read in the Bible is the earth. There's no Big Bang. It's the earth. And so that earth is meant to be inhabited. And this is where humans and animals are going to dwell. We have no indication that the planets and anything else is used for inhabitation. So it's a good question. I don't know how people respond. But the question is, what kind of life? If you were to find aliens, there's actually a book and a DVD, Alien Intrusion. Alien. We've heard so much about aliens. I watched the Star Trek, Stargate, Star Wars, anything starry. My kids, all 4 sons, were all watching Star Wars. Okay, beam me up, Scotty. Anyway, but so it's all talk about aliens. How much evidence for aliens is there?
They're hidden in Area 51.
Yeah. So let me answer this question. What are aliens? What are aliens? So are they likely to be beings or like creatures that lived on other planets? No. Simply because they would never be able to get here. And also, traveling through space at the speed of, at any speed, even a little micro dot will destroy it. Okay? This is how the energy, mass times, anyway, this is good stuff. Okay? What they have claimed to have found is amino acids and some kind of chemicals on asteroids. And of course, if you knew about DNA, it's all about amino acids, okay? But some people say, oh, the building blocks of life. Well, not really. Because the DNA has 3 billion of these chemicals, okay? And they're not just random. They're specifically placed at very specific points. They're just not just floating around there. It's in a specific sequence. So it's a little bit like saying, we have been able to explain how you got a car because we found iron. Okay? Just because you have found iron doesn't mean that you can make a car, right? Because it doesn't naturally lend itself to a vehicle. You got to do a lot of stuff to the iron in order for you to actually get steel to make a car with. It has to be intelligently manipulated. So people, people want clicks. They want people to read their stuff. So they will put stuff out there for you to click on. Oh, on the asteroid, they found all these amino acids. Yeah, so they're just chemicals. We have all these on Earth too. So just because you have them doesn't mean you have life. And you can never have life like that. It's just way, way too complicated. Does that answer your question? So I'm not sure what the answer. Go ahead.
I have a question. When we read in Genesis, we see that light is created first, but we only see days as sun and moon on day 4.
Correct.
How come day 1, 2, and 3 can be said there was a night and there was a day?
Because there was light. So the question is what is the light on day 1, 2, and 3 before the sun came?
Exactly.
We don't know. It's not the sun.
So how can we say is it just because it's written that there was a night and there was a day when
So what you have is you have a light source. Okay? We don't know what it is. The Bible tells us that God himself is light. God is light. So whether that's metaphor or allegory, but this is not a problem for God. It's a problem because we weren't there, we don't know what happened, and we're trying to look back and say, well, how do you explain that? People can speculate till the cows come home, as we say, right? But there's no answer to that question. Although people have used this as an excuse, as a refutation, because I went to, I was doing something with Iranian Christians who were attending an Anglican church downtown. And I said I was discipling them, and I told them I also speak for Creation Ministries International. The Anglican priest asked me this question: where did the light come from on day 1? He doesn't believe in creation. He believes in evolution. Where did the light come? As somehow this is an an insurmountable question. I could ask him, well, where did it come from? Because he didn't believe it, so it's something for me to explain. I said, I don't know where it came. I didn't answer him because I knew where he was going with that. But sometimes the Bible does not give us enough information. And so, where do you go with that? Well, it's not important then. It can't be important if we don't know the information. But we do know that the sun and moon and stars were created on day 4, which is rather interesting because the plants were made on day 3. Now, we do know that if these days were millions of billions of years, it doesn't make sense to make the plants first and then millions of years the sun, because you need the sun for the plants. So all the plants would have long died, and then God figures out, man, I forgot something. I got to put a sun in the sky. Oh, there it is. Okay, well, all those plants are dead. Okay, so it doesn't make any sense. So, yeah, I always say to people, if there's not enough information in the Bible, then that's as far as we can go. There's so many other things to know about that we don't need to. Don't allow people to trip you up on answers you don't have and can never get. Okay, just simply because God didn't tell us. Okay. Shroud of Turin. Huh. Anybody heard of the Shroud of Turin? Anybody not heard of the Shroud of Turin? Anybody not putting up their hand because... Okay. Okay, let me go with this one. So this was a question I was asked in advance to look up. Now, I grew up Catholic. I converted to evangelical when I was in the 20s. So one of the icons is the Shroud of Turin. Okay? So this is apparently the burial cloth of Jesus. When he was in the tomb, they wrapped him, looked like head to toe and back again, around. Okay? And so he died in this. And the idea was that Jesus was, during the resurrection, there was such energy that it actually created an imprint on this cloth. It's not so good on positive, but when you look at it as negative, it is stunning. And it has been debated for years and years and years as to exactly what caused this. How could that cut? Obviously, it's a dead man. You can see some features on it. And so for Catholics and for people who are looking for something tangible, like touching the actual or seeing the actual cloth that was buried in Jesus, wow, that would be phenomenal. The question is it? Now, first of all, nobody can explain. Scientists have looked at it up and down. They can't explain what this is. It's very unique. The energy is far beyond anything people can imagine, and they don't know. So then they said, well, let's do some testing. So they went through some testing, and they sent it to, I think it was Oxford University, who had some samples from the edges. Now, when you use carbon dating, you have to destroy the material. It's part of it. You have to burn it. And as burning it, then you use that carbon to date. And so they didn't want to give a lot. And so Oxford University got it and then sent it out to 3 laboratories. One's in Oxford, one's in Arizona. I forget the other place. Okay, so they came back with their report, and they said it was about Middle Ages, 1263 to 1300. Well, that wasn't the answer they were looking for. They were looking for something around 2,000 years ago. Anyway, but the radiometric dating lab, now this is 1989, came back with a published report. 3 independent labs came back with the same dates, and it's couldn't be from Jesus. All right, well, that should have ended the question. But a lot of people were convinced, no, it is. We know for sure. I know for sure. So millions of dollars have been spent, and thousands of hours have been used to analyze it every possible way. They looked at the material, they looked at the fibers, they looked at the contamination, they looked at every scientific discipline, literally thousands and thousands of hours. So what they're saying now is, according to a report in the Catholic, that it is definitely the shroud. Okay? Definitely shroud. Oh yeah, from many different aspects, it's the shroud. No. Well, what about the carbon-14 dating? What the carbon dating? Well, in 2019, other experts in carbon dating said, let's look at what the dating, what they were doing. Okay, how they did actually do that. Well, when they went into they were looking at the raw data, because when they do carbon-14 data, they get dating, they get raw data. In other words, the machine they put it in puts out some numbers. Those numbers then have to be calculated, worked, to get a date. And we can mention that in a minute. Okay? So this lab said there's a lot of anomalies in the dating, the way they were dated. He says they had wide discrepancy in dates. It also seems like, he said this was, and I haven't got any further with that, says that we get a date at the edge, the material at the edge of the shroud, to about date. But when we look further towards the middle, the dates get younger and younger till to the future. Right? Think about that for a second. So by this method we use, if we look at the actual dating of it, we date it more toward the interior, we're going to get a shroud in the future. Well, it's one thing we know. It's not older than 2000. And we definitely know it's not in the future. It's the here and now. Okay? So what does that tell you? Can I tell you? For in Catholicism, which is a large body of Christianity, and Orthodoxy, having an icon like this shroud, this is the numero uno one, more than the Holy Grail, right? We're not sure what that was, whether it was a chalice or whatever, right? But this Shroud of Turin, this is the number one icon. So there's a lot of people have a lot of vested interest. The Christians, the Catholics, got to be from Jesus. It's got to be about Jesus. The atheist and the secularist, it's not from Jesus. So you have a lot of motivation for looking at this. Now, think about this. The oldest this shroud could be is 2,000 years old. That's the maximum. What happens then, and there's this great controversy and a lot of money and effort spent, they still are not quite sure. People can't come to a final agreement. How about things that are allegedly dated 50,000 years old, 100,000 years old, millions of years old? How can we be more confident of those dates than we are of this one, in which so much effort has been to find the truth? So there's a lot of things at play here with the dating method, and one of them is, what do I want the answer to be? What do I want it to say? What do I want it to? So no, this type of historical science, looking at the evidence and trying to figure out what happened in the past, there's a lot of subjectivity, a lot of bias, a lot of personal interest, etc., that you cannot get away from. That's why whenever you debate an evolutionist, there's always it's not just about the science, it's about the motivation. It's a spiritual question. So if it's something about the Big Bang, it isn't about science, really. Okay? And we'll come to that in a minute. Okay? So the Shroud of Turin, is it really the burial cloth of Jesus? So if you're a Catholic, you go to a Catholic website, absolutely, 100%. Well, do you want it to be the burial cloth of Jesus? Well, anyway, I can't answer that question. I don't, because I'd just be putting my 2 cents into, I think it probably is. There's no reason why it shouldn't, but actually, whether it is or isn't is not a problem for me. My faith does not rest on having a shroud of Jesus. I have been to the tomb in Jerusalem. Both of them. So, all right. So that was a question on a Shroud of Turin. Let's carry on with radiometric dating. Okay, let me go 1, 2. Okay, hang on. Because this one, anybody interested in radiometric dating? Because this one, sorry, nobody's interested? Then I'll move on. Oh, okay, sorry, I thought it was Danny. So for many people, this is the showstopper. This is, they say, gives absolute ages. Does it? So we're going to talk about radiometric dating and carbon dating. Now, carbon dating is just one of the many types of radiometric dating. Okay, you have potassium argon, uridium lead, all different types of isotopes. And an isotope is simply a radioactive element, something that's radioactive. The carbon that we breathe, carbon dioxide, it's not just carbon dioxide, there's carbon 12, there's carbon 13, and there's carbon 14. Carbon 12 is 98% of all the carbon we have, and is carbon. It mixes with oxygen and becomes carbon dioxide. Everybody breathes that, not a problem. But carbon 14 is radioactive. Is it a problem? Nah, it's not going to do you any harm. Uranium will do you harm, but carbon 14. But it is radioactive. What that means is that over time, because it's radioactive, it's giving off energy, particles, and waves over time. So eventually, it's going to lose it. So if I started with 100%, let's say this, whatever that thing was, here it is. Let's say this amber was 100% carbon when it was originally formed. Okay, we'll speak about where it comes from. So after what they call a half-life, about 5,730 years, well, why don't I actually show you something here? Here, this is the chart, half-life chart. So if it's 100% carbon-14, after 5,730 years, I have half of the amount. So half of this will be carbon-14. After another 5,730 years, sorry, this is supposed to be animated. There you go. Back up. Voila. Okay. So after 5,030 years, so every 5,730 years, I have half. So it's a half, a quarter, an eighth, a 16th, a 32nd, the 64th, the 128th, the 156th, 1,512, 230. Anyway, all you need to know is this. If you take away from them, it loses its radioactivity element, and it becomes something else. Now, in the case of carbon-14, it becomes nitrogen-14. Nitrogen is a gas. Don't worry about it. It's disappeared. Okay? So, carbon-14. So, need to remember this. 10 half-lives for any radiometric or anything. After 10 half-lives, you have nothing left. Okay? So, after 5,730 times 10 is 57,300. Which means that after about 60,000 years, even if this was 100% carbon-14 to start off with, after 60,000 years, it's all gone. There's nothing can be done to prevent that from happening. All right. Okay, so that's radiometric dating. Let's go back up a second. Part of the problem with radiometric dating is that it involves quite a number of assumptions. And this is one of the things, in all of this scientific discussion about creation evolution, there's a few things that I've learned. Ask what the assumptions are. What are you assuming to be true? When people criticize the flood, you ask them, what are you assuming about the flood that you criticize it like that? And many people have some weird ideas about what the flood would have been, or anything. In fact, in anything you're dealing with, ask, what are the assumptions? And second thing I also do is ask, what is the real question that's being asked? So consider the assumptions and analyze the question before jumping at the answer. Make sure you actually know what is being asked. Otherwise, you'll spend a lot of time and people get lost and you don't remember where you're at. Okay, so there's a number of assumptions with radiometric dating, and we're just quickly going to. Number one is, how do I know this was 100% carbon-14 at the beginning? Unless I was there, I don't know. I'm assuming it was, but it may or may not be. I don't know that. And also hang on. We're also assuming that the decay rates are constant. that it's like the hourglass. You put sand in the top, okay, and over time the sand slowly goes down. And so after 60,000 years, all the sand at the top, carbon-14, should be at the bottom. So it has carbon, and then none left, all the way at the bottom. But how do I know how much I had to begin with? And I'm assuming that the rate of these is being constant. And lastly, did I have any of the daughter products? Now, it doesn't matter so much in carbon-14, but in potassium argon, about the what it converts to. Because if I'm going from potassium to argon, if I had 100% argon over the billions of years, it's going to become 100% argon. So then I'm looking, if I have half of potassium, half of argon, I know it's about halfway through the process. Okay? But how do I know how much argon I had to begin with from the start? You don't. So these are all the assumptions that come into play. All right? So the other question is, how do I know that in this hourglass, somebody didn't open the top and put more in, more carbon-14 or more radioactive element in the beginning? So throughout time, how can we know something wasn't added or something wasn't taken out? When you're dealing with thousands of years, it might not be that difficult. When you're dealing with allegedly billions of years, how could you possibly know that? You cannot. Okay. Now, I'll go here. Okay. So, with the help of AI, I was able to generate this image. Carbon-14, you know, how deep do we want to get into this? I'll just tell you a number of things that influenced this. If you ever want this picture, I can send it to you. Just send me an email, okay? So carbon-14 is created by cosmic radiation from outer space, comes to hit the atmosphere, it hits nitrogen, converts them into carbon-14. That carbon-14 is then throughout all the planet, okay? Now, one of the things that we have to know is, has the rate of creation of carbon-14 always been the same? Because we know that this has not always been the same. And it's affected by cosmic radiation. It's affected also by magnetic field, which change over time. All right, so this carbon-14 is then ingested in the plants, but we also know that plants do not all take in carbon-14 at the same rate. Oh, okay. So the animal then takes in this carbon, eats the plants, etc., and it comes into their body. But we know that animals also don't take all this food in at the same rate. All right, so when the animal dies, it stays there in the carbon-14. Nothing's added because the animal is dead. And then if we were to, let me go back here. And then if we were able to analyze a bone, let's say, from that dead cow, we would then count how many carbon-14 atoms are in there. And that's what these accelerated mass spectrometry does. It counts how much carbon-14 atoms. Earlier ones looked at gases. The later ones, and this is looking at the count. How many carbon-14? Okay, there's a lot of gobbledygook in there, okay? But what they're doing with the C14 is not because the daughter element, nitrogen-14, escapes. They're looking at the ratio of carbon-14 to carbon-12. They're looking at the ratio. And the more carbon-14 you have, the older it is. The less carbon-14 you have compared to carbon-12, the younger it is. All right, so what can affect this ratio? Well, one of the things that can affect it is the nuclear bombs that were tested in 1950s and 60s. As a byproduct of nuclear reactions, you have carbon-14. That dumped a whole lot of carbon-14 into the atmosphere. And so we know this because this was done. And so radiometric labs have to verify that they are what they call tracer carbon-free. None of this nuclear carbon-14. Okay, so that's one of the things that create that nuclear bombs. Also, fossil fuels. Burning fossil fuels puts what into the atmosphere? Carbon dioxide. Okay? Carbon dioxide then is going to, carbon-12 is going to bias the ratio of carbon-14 to carbon-12, giving you dates. Anyway, you have other factors in the way, such as reservoir effect. I can't hardly read it there, but et cetera, et cetera. So all these functions. And so what happens is they put a sample of this material we tested in this machine. Beep, 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 all comes out. At the end, it counts the carbon-14 atoms, and then they have to apply the calculation. Okay? Based on all these correction factors for all these things that there's no possible way that they could account for. Okay? So, is it absolute? Only if you can verify that all those assumptions, if you can prove all of those assumptions, you can verify it. And you cannot. Okay? Now, what it is good for is carbon-14 is for things where we know of current age. And so they do a comparison. So they have to have a standard, such as piece of Egyptian burial cloth. They use that as a standard to compare the count from that and the product under test. And then they will compare it and say, well, it's roughly the same age. So it works, carbon-14 will work within several thousands of years. Beyond that, forget it. And so this is a whole talk. I don't want to take too long on that. But any questions on that? Yes. Related to this? Can I move off of this? Thank you. Okay. All these are questions that you could possibly ask. Look at, I got them all there. Okay. Go ahead.
So at the beginning, you mentioned that the Earth was created in 7 days, and it's actually 24 hours days. And I was wondering because
24-hour days. Seventh is rest.
Sorry, yes.
Just to be clear.
Sorry, yes. So 6 days, including a seventh rest day. I was wondering because we talked about, when Jesus came back to life, he said that he will come and bring us with him soon. And so it was always a question for me as to what soon means. If a day lasts 24 hours and he hasn't come yet. So what does that mean?
Okay, so the question is, how long is a day? Is that your question? How long is a day?
More like, why hasn't Jesus come? Why hasn't God come yet, since he said he will come soon, even though we know that a day lasts 24 hours? What is soon?
Pastor? This is really not a Christian evolution question, but let me ask you this. Let me put this. There are multiple ways in which you could use the word day, okay? Seems like soon is a relative term, right? How long is soon? Like, if you have a kidney stone, which I have had, and you want a painkiller, how soon is soon? 24 hours? No. Now is soon, okay? We're going to get you one soon. No, that's not good enough. When Jesus says soon, it's like, it's on his timetable. Right? Not on our timetable. So, yes, people have been saying, Jesus, you said, you're going to come back soon. And in Jesus' day, they were expecting him. They said, you should be mindful of the time that it's going to be, it could be any day now. That's what the disciples are telling. But their understanding of soon is obviously not. So, we got it. And this is, of course, we don't understand it. Why would Jesus say coming soon if now it's been 2,000 years? I don't know. And it's a very good question. I'm sure Pastor will have a definitive answer on that. My theory is, yeah, it all depends on, we got to take it in terms of God's timing, okay? But the thing with age is this, like a day. This is a sentence we use. In my father's day, it took 7 days to cross the country in a car when we traveled during the day. So in my father's day, it took 7 days, and we were traveling during the day. So in 3 ways you have day used. One is a day as a period of a time and era. A day is a literal 24-hour day, but also day is the light period of the day. So as any theologian will tell you, it's context. In how is this used in this particular, sentence in the paragraph, etc. And in the Genesis, it's literal days. That's how it is used. How are we doing, Pastor? Big Bang. Was it you? You. Yes, sir. Big Bang. Okay. So let me ask this question. Let me ask you a question. When did the idea of a Big Bang come into modern science, modern world? Any idea when the idea of a Big Bang was actually come up with? Who said, sorry? You. Oh, sorry. 1800s? No. Anybody else? Anybody else? In the 1950s, it was a new idea. A French, so it comes like, I'll go to find my slide here. Big Bang. What was Big Bang? Here we go. Okay. So, what happened was that there was a guy by the name of Edwin Hubble who had a big telescope, okay? And he looked up at the stars and he noticed that they were red shifted, okay? On a color spectrum, you go from redshift, ultraviolet, then infrared, so they were all red shifted. What that meant, they believed, was that the stars are moving away from us. If the stars were, the Doppler effect, if the stars were coming closer to us, they would be blue. All right, so they're moving away. So he looked around. It looks like, he said, the universe is expanding. Okay. Now, at the time, the view of the universe, what we call steady state. The universe existed. It always existed. Nothing much changed. That's it. Okay, so the steady state idea. So Hubble looked at, well, this after Einstein and stuff. He said, well, it looks like the universe, the sky's expanding. And it's not like, it's kind of like a balloon. As you blow up a balloon, the skin stretches on the outside, right? The balloon is getting bigger and the skin is stretching. So it's like moving, everything is moving away from each other. So he thought, well, it seems like everything is moving, expanding and moving out, etc. So a French priest by the name of Georges Lemaitre, right, said in the 1940s and 50s, he said, well, if we're moving in time, we're getting expanding, then maybe back in time we were contracting. And he says, well, maybe in time it goes down to a single point called a singularity. And at one time, all the mass of the universe, every particle of the universe, the sun, the moon, stars, everything's smaller than a head of a pin, right? Called the singularity. And then, for some reason, it decides to blow up, expand. Of course, you got to use a lot of imagination here, right? So then it expanded, and the expansion had to be so, because it's all tight with gravity. Gravity, oh, it's unbelievable. And then it exploded. Why? Nobody knows. It just did. Okay? And it exploded. But it has to blow up fast enough that the gravity won't pull it back together. Okay? You follow? Because if it's all been held by like elastics, it's all been held by this glue. But you got to blow it up fast enough so that it overcomes the force of gravity and keeps on going. That was the Big Bang idea. Now, when it was first proposed on Sir Fred Hoyle, who was a Nobel Prize winner, he heard of that. He said, you mean like some kind of a Big Bang? He meant it as a joke. Because this is new to him too, like, well, okay, like Big Bang. And he says, so the idea was that singularity. Now, there's a whole lot, and now this has become very popular. This is just one of many explanations for how the universe began. First of all, you need to remember that God, according to modern science, is not involved in anything. So if you want to explain how the universe came into being, you have to explain it without God. No supernatural, everything natural. Well, you come up with these ideas, and so scientists play around with it. What do you think about that? Well, maybe this and whatever, right? So it has gone, so it started off with the initial expansion, what they called the inflation. But this expansion, far faster than the speed of light. No known physics. Well beyond anything. Okay, because otherwise it collapsed and then we wouldn't have anything. Okay, so now one other thing they found out is that when they calculated all the mass, the sun, the galaxies, the planets, stars, put them all together, they began to realize that all these objects of gravity, they're all pulling on each other. The moon is pulling on the earth is pulling on the moon, and the sun is pulling on the earth. Everything's kept together by this gravity. But then they calculated there's not enough gravity. There isn't enough mass in gravity in all that mass to keep it all together. right? So then they had to come up with something to produce this mass. They called it dark matter. Dark matter. Has anybody ever seen dark matter? No. Has anybody ever measured dark matter? No. But it's got to be there because otherwise our theory won't work. Okay, so we just make stuff up. All right? Now also, they noticed that now this is really where it's tricky, is that the expansion is expanding at a certain rate. How fast? Well, if it's expanding very rapidly, then of course it would have started very rapidly. If very slowly, this is what they call figuring out this rate of expansion. It's called a cosmological constant. And different people have different figures for the cosmological constant that they're not working together. They're colliding with each other. So they needed also energy to keep this expansion going. You know, you have to keep going, guys. You have to have some energy to expand the entire universe. Okay? Guess what they would call that? If the gravity comes from dark matter, the energy has to come from dark energy. Okay? So this dark matter and this dark energy account for about 95% of the energy required to make the Big Bang happen. But nobody's ever seen dark matter or dark energy. It's just believed to be there. Wait a minute. So now what's been happening, and all of this is not based on anything you could actually touch or feel or do any experiments on. You can't go into the star and see what's actually happening out there. You know, they say people are saying, oh, well, we saw the signs of civilization. We saw, oxygen on a planet 7 light years away. Right? You didn't see anything like that. You have see some interpreted that way, but you obviously haven't tested it. All right. So what's the state of the art today? Well, here's one. Canadian physicist, Journal of Physics and Astronomy. The Big Bang never happened. A collective agreement, conclusive argument. Calls it an impossibility. Galaxy is not receding, blah, blah. I don't have time to go into that. Right? So this is one of the academics in the field saying it never happened. Here's another one. It says the universe might be billions of years younger than we thought. Right? It's and a new calculation point to an age of 11.4 billion. A couple of billion off, who cares? Rather than accept the 30.7. But the huge swing in scientists' estimates, even this new calculation could be off by billions of years, reflect different approaches to of figuring the universe's real age. It says, it is difficult to be certain of your conclusions if you use a ruler that you don't fully understand. So they're given these ages based on rulers, but they don't understand the ruler. Oh. How about this one? Canadian astrophysicist, Canadian academics suggest there was no Big Bang. How about this? If dark matter doesn't exist, then the story about how stars and planets formed is mathematically impossible because there isn't enough gravity to do the job. If there isn't any dark matter, it disproves the Big Bang cosmology. All right? And they haven't found any. Or an Ottawa physicist came up with this idea that the universe is twice as old. Not 13.7, 26.7. Wait a minute. So we're going all the way from it never happened to 26 billion and anything in between. What do you prefer? But one of the things that is very dangerous is Christians doing this. The Big Bang is one of the greatest proofs of the existence of God. Elisa Childers, who's a popular Christian podcaster, who says that we should hang our hat on this as the greatest. Are you kidding? Not even the scientists themselves even agree whether it actually ever happened. And you're going to say this is one of the greatest evidence of the existence of God? I don't think so. Right? Very different. Because when the Big Bang disintegrates, what then happens to one of the greatest proofs of the existence of God? Instead of being a faith builder, it will be a faith destroyer. Right? Did that answer the question on the Big Bang? Enough? I could go on. Okay, if you'll indulge me, we have more. We started late, It's supposed to be at 7, but I have something I'd like to share with you. Is that okay? Anybody need to go? If you need to go, God bless you. Thanks for coming. Buy something. But it has to do with this. Okay. So we have these fossils. Okay. We have fossils that are found. How do you date fossils? Here is a fossilized clam. I have other ones I didn't bring it, but here's a fossilized clam. Okay. It is closed, meaning it must have been alive when it was fossilized. Okay. Otherwise, dead clams open up and they're two pieces and they're not going to fossilize. All right. So, how do they date these? How old is this? How do they know? I'm looking for the date. No, it's not written. Can't be written on there. Right? They date it not by radiometric dating. It is expensive, and as you see, it all depends on the assumptions. Very few people do that. What they do it is by the layers of rock that it is found in. Okay? This has long been established well before Darwin, long before radiometric dating, the ages of all these rocks. And you may know it as the geologic column. Okay? Anybody know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm talking about? All right, talking about it. All right, Grand Canyon. I don't know if you've ever been to Grand Canyon, but it is worth a look-see. Now, that's supposed to go a lot smoother. Oh, it's smoother on mine. It is, in fact, it is a Grand Canyon. It is very long. Grand Canyon covers 200 to 220 miles in a straight line, but if you follow the Colorado River, it's about 446 kilometers. It is huge. It is massive. Okay? So you'll notice all the layers, the strata there, they call it, all the layering in the rock. Those are supposedly part of the geological column. You've seen this before? Everybody? And so the geological column is basically, down at the bottom you have the Cambrian. Let me see if I can get a pointer here. Pointer, screen's option, pointer option. Okay, so you see this guy, whoop, hang on a second. Right, you see this layer here, Cambrian? A Cambrian is supposed to be the start of life. Start of life down here. And of course, as you go up, you're going to have more. And so you have other creatures, Paleogene, right about here. Somewhere around here. Okay, you also have Jurassic. You've heard of Jurassic Park. That's why the dinosaurs, of course, are in, etc. So when you look at the Grand Canyon, they say, you're looking at all of these layers over time. Now we're going to look at exactly how these things are formed. Okay? So this is where the ages come from. If you find a fossil in the Jurassic layer, you know that it's somewhere between 199.6 million and 145.5 million years ago. That's how they date this. And there are three epochs: Paleozoic, Mesozoic or middle life, and Cenozoic, which means modern life or recent life. Okay, so far so good? Perfect. So we're going to look at some place on the United States. These are between Bryan Head and Cape Royal, Arizona. Sort of picture's not very clear, but as you can see, so this is in Utah, and this is in Arizona, and this place, Cape Royal, is just on the edge, the northern rim of the Grand Canyon. You see the Grand Canyon here, it winds its way 466 kilometers. It's huge, it's massive. Okay, it looks a little bit like it's projecting up rather than going down, but it's going down. This is in this region of the United States, 4-state area, Utah, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico. And in that region, they believe that there was a interior seaway, okay, part of the crust move. We'll see that later on. But just remember that in this area, the interior seaway. Now, the Grand Canyon, this area here, you see, is called the Colorado Plateau. Colorado Plateau, there. Okay? And we are going to zoom in closer. In this area, there's a geological formation called the Grand Staircase. It looks like steps as you go up. And we're going to take a look at the view from this angle, as if it was cut. Somebody cut the earth right there with a saw, and we're looking from an angle. All right. So this is what you see. So up at Bryan Head here, which is about 11,300 feet or 3,400 meters, you can see all the way down steps, all the way like step as a staircase, all the way down here to Cape Royal, which is just at the edge of the Grand Canyon, which is this cut here. And of course, you will notice that all of these layers represent those, obviously, geological time. So far, so good. I want to make sure you're all tracking with me because it gets a little complicated. Am I moving in and out? Okay. All right. So creationists would believe that the first layers were laid down during the flood, early flood. The middle layers were laid down during the middle flood, and the late flood would be at the upper layer. Obviously, the flood, and this has to do with how you modeled the flood. Was it just like a bathtub filling? You know, somebody just started pouring water somewhere and just started floating and the car on land, etc. Or was it, I'm not sure where we're cutting out here. Maybe the battery is starting to... is there a battery meter? Maybe I'm going too long. Anyway, this is the last thing we have to cover. Okay, I just finished this morning, so I just wanted to go through it if you don't mind. Okay. I could use one of these handheld mics if that's better.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can.
Oh. Simple.
Yes. It working? Okay? Voice back. Don't. How would I just talk like this?
Okay.
Try again. Too much? Huh? I'll just talk loud. I'll just pretend you're my kids. All right. So.
Test.
Try that. Testing 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me okay? Wunderbar. Sehr gut. Danke. All right, so all these are layers that were laid down over this long period of time. All right. So, one of the things you will notice is that there's an awful lot of this material missing. If we assume that these were all laid down over a long period of time, we're looking at a huge amount of material that has been missing. Roughly 842 to 1.7 million cubic kilometers of rock was removed. Which begs the question, where did it go? What could remove that? That's a very good question. I don't have an answer. Okay. So, it's interesting to note that I mentioned that the Western Seaway, what was the name again? Anyway, that coastal seaway that through the middle goes up and down, but the Grand Canyon and the erosion goes horizontal. So if there was a Western Interior Seaway going up and down, it would have eroded material up and down, north and south, but in fact, it's eroding east and west. So obviously, this Interior Seaway didn't do the eroding. Something, and probably Lake Missoula, which is on the continent. Again, that's beyond, anyway, just anomaly. All right, so let's look at this. This is very interesting. I find anyway. So here we have these layers. Okay, so you have it on the left. Remember, the left is the north. And as we move across, you'll see there's different layers. They're wonderful canyons, like Zion Canyon. I've been there with my wife. Fantastic. If you ever have a chance to go to the United States, from Utah down to the Grand Canyon, fantastic. It's awesome. It's awesome. And on the farthest right, you have the Grand Canyon. It doesn't look very big in comparison to all the material that was there, right? So we're going to zoom in a bit, Grand Canyon. You can see that and see all the layers. Those layers correspond to the Paleozoic, roughly 540 million years ago to 250 million years ago. You will notice at the top of this, there is flat. Remember that picture, the first picture I showed, it was flat at the top? That is called a planation surface, plane. And that allegedly is 270 million years old. Everything above it is gone. So the top of the Grand Canyon is 270 million years old. Interesting. Remember those, because it's going to start to all gel together. So you can see these are the time zones, etc., the time periods. Very interesting to note that there's actually more material missing than actually exists. And according to geology, I've gotten the university geology books and I'm looking through them and they're saying at this Archaeozoic, now this is before the Grand Canyon, before all these sedimentary layers were laid on the earth. This is kind of like the basement rock. There's a roughly in this area 100 to 500 million years worth of rock is missing. They say it wasn't laid down. Really? How could it missing? There's also great unconformity, which is roughly 1.1 to 1.2 billion years of material not laid down. It's missing. Wait a minute. How can it be not there? How can it be missing? What happened to it? How could it have gone? Also, between these two layers, the Temple Butte limestone and the Moab limestone, it's 120 to 140 million years missing. How does one layer of rock sit there flat for 120 million years and then wait there unmolested, unaffected by anything, wind, rain, storm, nothing, all just sit there nice and flat for 120 million years, waiting for the next layer to come and lay on top of it? And that next layer does nothing to the first layer. How is that possible? Do you follow what I'm getting at here? Okay, good. Also, here's another 15 to 45 million. This is not me, man. This is what the geologists say. And of course, at the top of the Grand Canyon, the flat, there's 2,000 feet missing, which is roughly 270 million years worth of rock missing. Where'd it all go? Well, that's a good question. So in the Paleozoic, that's the upper region there, which is basically what the Grand Canyon you can see, roughly missing 135 to 185 million years of rock is missing. And as all of this layers that we see here is missing, is 1.5 to 2.5 billion years of rock is missing. And yet, if we look at the Archaeozoic at the very bottom, you can't see the text, it says over 1.5 billion years ago. In other words, there's far more rock that isn't there than there is there. Don't ask me. Okay. Now, one of the things I want you to notice, okay, we're going to watch a little video, an animation that I put together, explaining now, according to geologists, there's what they call plate tectonic. The plates of the earth are moving around in relation to each other. So this is an animation of this plate tectonic movement, these hemispheres, over the last 500 million years, 500 million years. So I'm going to point out where North America is, because that's really where all the Grand Canyon is. Okay, and it's going to see that yellow arrow. It's going to track with the time as it goes up the Grand Canyon, up the geological column. So I synchronize the two together. And we're going to ask some questions. For example, when these sedimentary rocks are moved, if they're trying to pressure on them laterally, they start to buckle. They got synclines, anticlines. Here you can see some waves of the patterns in the Arizona desert. Here, see some other ones. Rapid, over 100, almost 120 degree bend. How do you bend rock? There's not just one, but here, more bending of rock. Here's some more bending of rock. Here's some more bending of rock. How do you bend rock? Anybody tried this at home? Try to bend a rock? So this is very difficult because usually what happens when when rock has been tried to bend, it shatters, it fractures, it turns into gravel, right? It's very, very brittle. Now they say, yes, but if it was under very slow, it would then able to buckle. However, okay, it's going to bend. But the idea is that if you push these rocks in towards each other, they're going to fold. Here, this is in Namibia. You can see the truck at the bottom. 200 feet of rock has been turned up together. They must all have been bent together. Okay, it's hard to imagine one layer laying out vertically and another layer laying out vertically. That doesn't happen. They're all bent together. Okay, so in the following animation, consider these questions. How do these layers remain flat and unaffected by wind, water, tectonic movement, plants, etc. for millions of years? How is that possible? Do we have any experience with that? This doesn't happen. You got wind and rain, they scour the road, etc. Okay. What brought millions of kilometers of sediment onto the previous layer? You need to remember that the sediments are what sedimented out of water. To move those sediments, you need 10 times that volume in water. So if you're covering hundreds of thousands of square kilometers in sediment, you need 10 times more of that in water to move it. Some people say it was moved by wind. Okay, yeah, it's not likely to happen by wind. And wind creates dunes, not flat layers. Okay. And how could the new sediment deposition not affect the previous layer without massive erosion? Whenever you see a flood come along, does it just lay out everything nice and flat? Or does it go from high to low and erode everything in between? That's exactly what it does. And how could fossils in the strata, remember, that's where we get the fossils from, these strata, how could they be unaffected by millions of years of tectonic movement? That's the question. You can't have these fossils stay together if you're bending the rocks that it's in. Right? Okay. What would be the geological effect of the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs believed to be 65 million years ago? Right? Because that's what they say. An asteroid hit the Earth, maybe Chicxulub in Yucatan Peninsula, hit the Earth, did something massive to kill out all the dinosaurs. That's why we ain't got none left. Okay? That's what they're telling us. But let's look at this. So this is the geologic column. This is one of the 2016, there's actually data, a database of all the stuff put together by the geologists, and from that is extracted all this animation that you're going to see. Okay, so let's just watch it. If it works. Go. Oh, man. Don't tell me it's not working. Huh. Well. Oh, here it is. Thank you. Whew. All right, there we go. So that's North America you see in that yellow highlight. So this is a lot of it's underwater, and that's the layers that we have in the Grand Canyon that have been formed. Okay. Again, watch what's happening to the rocks on the Grand Canyon. Underwater, above water, squished. This is in the last 160 years. There's the dinosaurs still existing, and now we're going to come to, as you'll see, an asteroid. It's going to come and wipe out the dinosaurs. Watch what happens to the planet when the asteroid hits. Right. So notice all the landform changes, etc., etc., etc. So, if you can move the strata within like 20, 30 meters and it buckles, how are all these layers going to remain flat and smooth over 100,000 kilometers while all of this is going on? You follow what we're getting at here? It doesn't make sense to me. So let's ask the question. What happened to the geology of the Earth when that asteroid hit? Anybody notice anything? Nothing. Then really, what did the asteroid do? Nothing. There was no asteroid. That's not what happened. It was a global flood. Okay, so I don't know if that does that sort of explain anything to you? Okay. Yes, sir. Oh, there's an online question? Okay. Perfect. What was the question? Oh, wait a minute. Okay, from Florence. Good question. I'm going to go back to skins, color. There's a lot to be said about this because it has to do a lot with racism and slavery and et cetera, and race relations, and as you know. So this has been going on a long time. Okay. Let me ask this question. How many races are there? How many races of humans are there? Anybody have an answer? Il y a un. We're all descendant of Noah and his family. Okay, and Adam and Eve. Okay, so what happens, I have a pamphlet here. You can pick that up for free, the number pamphlet. You see these two kids here? They're sisters. One's black, one's white. How is that possible? One's very white, one's very, mostly black. Okay? How is that possible? Pardon? Yeah, it's genetics. That's all it is, genetics. So obviously their parents had the genetic code. They were actually brown. They had a genetic code for black and white and everything in between. So when Adam was created, he had the full genetic code without mutations for every variant of humans. Tall, short, blue eyes, brown eyes, black eyes, right? Skin color. There's actually, it's coding, there's two types of melanin which gives skin colors. There's the black-white, there's the red-yellow. Depends on which one you have, how much percentage of you. We usually want to go onto the sun and try to darken us up. It doesn't last very long, but, right? Because it's in your skin. That's all it is, it's skin color. Why do I have blue eyes? This is a recessive gene. My wife has brown eyes. So guess what color my son's eyes are? They're all brown. They're all brown. Okay. So, and what happens when you have a brown-eyed girl and a blue-eyed guy? You have brown-eyed kids. What happens when you have a black woman and a white man? What are the kids? Anywhere in between. Depends on genetic code, genetic makeup. So Adam and Eve would have had the full complement of everything that could be humans. However, all those people that were before the flood were all died out except for the three families of Noah. Of Noah's children and their spouses. So therefore it's called a population bottleneck that reduces the potential number of variants. And one of the possible variants is, due to genetic changes, is age. We do not live 900 years. People before the flood did live that long, on average, over 900 years. After the flood, because of this reduction in population, genetic diversity, now we are down. My mother's 96. I visited her last week. 96. She's really at the top there, right? People don't usually get over 100 too much. That's because our genetics doesn't allow. We start breaking down. That's because we have all these defects. Okay? And also some possible of height. There's some suggestion that people before the flood were a lot taller than we are now. Like big, like Goliath size. Okay, now some of the Goliath genes would have gone through Noah, through his family, to some population of Anak, etc. Eventually they died out, they were killed, so therefore there's no population left. Right? This is what happens when you reduce the genetic code, when you lose that diversity, you lose the genetics and that's gone. Right? It's very few people now, although one guy at our church, there was one guy, I swear he was over 7 feet. Young guy. Whoa. It's actually I see it more as a problem. Anywhere you go, you got to duck your head. Can you imagine on an airplane? Wow. It's great for basketball, but I mean, unless you're playing that all the time. Okay. All right, I hope that answered that question. Une autre question, madame? Yes. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so a couple of questions there about the people who migrated from Asia to Canada. There was a name for those people. I forget the name. But so do we believe in an ice age? Yes, one ice age. All right, to get and I'll just get around to the question a minute, okay? So how do you get an ice age? In order to have an ice, you got to remember the ice age did not cover the entire planet. The middle of the earth was hot. We never got any ice, just like southern Europe, southern United States, most of Africa never got any ice. Still doesn't, okay? It's only the north and south. Why? In order to have that much ice on the north and south poles, you have to have a lot of water. Where does the water come from? From the clouds. How does that much water get into the clouds? From a hot ocean. Where does the ocean get hot from? From the foundation of the deep that broke up. The crust of the earth comes through the crust. The Bible tells us that during the flood, the foundations of the deep broke forth. And obviously it heated up the earth, a lot of water. But it's going to take hundreds of years in order for it to build up, and then it's going to take a long time to build down. Okay, so one of the things that would have done is, since all the water, a lot of water that was in the ocean is now on the ice, top and south pole, I mean, you're talking kilometers thick, that means the ocean levels would have been lower, which means that the ice, the land bridges, for example, between Russia and Alaska would have been crossable. Also between, the Asia and Australia, all those islands there, you reduce by about 100 feet or about 35 meters, you have land. You can walk across to Australia. You also got to think in terms of that one of the models of the flood is called catastrophic plate tectonic. The idea that all the Earth's continent, there was one continent. That was because, remember the third day, the second day was gather all the waters into one place. So that means God is shaping the earth, putting all the water in one place, and the land is on the other place. Okay, so with all one land mass, which might have broken up during the flood. That's what caused all the tectonic movement is probably what caused the flood in the first place. All this, it doesn't take very much displacement in the underwater for tsunamis to occur. We found this in Southeast Asia and in Japan. You only have to have a deflection of meters, and you have hundreds of feet of water on land. That's the tsunami effect. So you can imagine this happens all over the world, tsunamis all over the place. Okay, so that during the flood settles down, and now because the water level is lower, people can cross over all the way from China. Okay, and of course after Babel, the language was confused, so there were three groups or multiple groups. One of the groups would have been going off to Asia, and then some of them would be migrated up through Africa or through Siberia onto North America and down through here. So obviously that means that the tribe, the indigenous people, are not tens of thousands of years old. They were within the last 5,000 years, 4,500 years. Okay, which makes sense for that. They don't have much. Usually, they don't have written history. They don't have oral history. Okay, so does that answer your question? Kind of. Okay. All right, folks. Any other questions? No, huh? Oh, une autre question. Where? Autism? The problem with kids, autism? Well, I have a grandson who has autism. Okay. Do I know where it came from? No, I have no clue about that. It'd be great to know, right? So you could fix it. Yeah, sorry, that's way out of my field. So, okay, a good question because I'd like to know from my grandson. Yes, somebody else? Creation? I mean, create from nothing.
Okay, so my question is really about. In the Bible, it says the world was created in 6 days. But when we are reading in Genesis chapter 2, it says something like, there is no man, but in Genesis chapter 1, it says God created Adam and Eve, but in chapter 2, it says, quietly, is Genèse 2 is in French, sorry. It says, L'Éternel forma l'homme de la poussière de la terre, il souffla dans ses narines un souffle de vie et l'homme devient un être vivant. It is in chapter 2 after the 7 days. So,
Right. So I think your question is, are Genesis 1 and Genesis 2
Yeah.
two separate accounts?
yes.
No. So what you have is Genesis 1 is a straightforward account. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7. Thanks, yeah, right, 1 through 7, just straight reading. Genesis 2 is going back and highlighting certain aspects, right? So it's the overview and then details. Chapter 2 is details,
Okay, yeah.
right? Because some people want to say, Genesis 1 is different than Genesis 2. Yes, that's correct, but there's a reason for that. Genesis 1 is a straightforward go-through, and Genesis 2 is specific details about Adam, about naming the animals. You know, it's the way Hebrew literature is written. And it's a very good way to do it. Let's go through it first, and I'll cover the big, broad picture, and let's go and talk about certain specific features. Okay?
Yeah. No, now it makes sense. So
Yeah.
another question is about. I saw that is the question number 13. Where did Cain get his wife? Because it's really complicated. according
Okay,
to the Bible.
there's a long answer and a short answer. Okay? So, the quick answer is Cain could have gotten his wife from his sister or his niece.
Yes, but you get immediately. According to the Bible, Adam and Eve didn't have any son after Abel and Cain.
No. It says they had.
It's after Seth, but when Seth
No, the
went
Bible.
there-
The Bible explicitly says. So there's Cain and Abel and Seth, and Adam and Eve had other children. It specifically says that.
Yes, it says, but after that, Cain gets his family before Seth.
Yeah, but we don't know the time. We don't know how much time. This is very contracted history, so it's quite possible that there was a long period of time between Adam and Eve created and Cain and Abel. We don't know this. We don't know. Could have been a week. It could have been 10 years, 20 years. You got to remember. And I cannot prove this, but there is a correlation between maturity, sexual maturity, and age. In other words, that the later sexual maturity happens, the older the thing lives. In other words, that the less like the earlier sexual maturity is. Okay. So, in other words, that since Adam and Eve were living over 900 years, it's quite possible that they only had sexual maturity. They could only have children after maybe 50, 60 years. Because it seems like in the Bible they had it like a week later, right? That's not what the Bible says. We're putting that in there, okay? So when were Cain and Abel? Okay, we don't know. But Adam and Eve had other children, okay? And of course, everybody lived a long time, so it's quite possible Adam had, Abel could have had, or Cain could have had his sister or a niece, right? All right. That's it.
Makes sense.
Okay, there's several things there. One is, there's no genetic defects in Adam and Eve. So therefore, there's no passing on of genetic mutations like there is today. In fact, the prohibition against incest or sex with close relations only came with Moses. And this is a long time after. And because of after the flood, the rate of mutations went up very quickly. That's why Adam and Eve, that's why Noah, although he lived almost 900 years, his children didn't. They lived fewer, like 500 years, and then down to 120, down to, etc., very like 80, 90 years, because of your genetic load, burden. After the population, genetic mutations are bad, and they reduce, viability. Okay, so that's probably why. And then God simply said, listen, to prevent this future genetic problems, do not have children with close relatives. You've got to increase your diversity. We know this is a problem because of animals. If you start breeding animals, like a dog breeder, start breeding brother and sisters, they get mutations all the way. Very, very dangerous. They don't want to do that. So they have to have new diversity. Okay? Anyone else? Did we answer your question?
Yes, but I have a last one. Was there other people in that period of time?
Before Adam and Eve?
No, in that period, like Adam, Eve, Abel, and Cain. Because Cain says something like, "You must, if you leave me here alone, maybe someone can
Kill him, yeah. But we don't know how long that was after. Because Adam and Eve did have other children, and of course, they were told to be fruitful and multiply. And there's no birth control, right? So obviously birth would have been very, very quick and rapid, and they were told to have as many kids as you can, right? So great, right? Until you have these kids running around and you got to feed them, so that's something else. But so it could have varied. The population could have grown very, very rapidly when you have large families, right? Adam and Eve could have had maybe 200-300 children. And they could have had 200-300 children. So you can imagine, population goes very, very fast. Okay. All right. I think that's covered in the Creation Answers book, the red one there. All right, folks. My wife is getting tired. So unless there's another question, we're going to wrap it up here. I hope this was helpful. Okay. Great. Thank you for coming. God bless you. Good night.
Donc, merci encore d'être venu. J'espère que c'était intéressant. Beaucoup de questions qu'on peut avoir ou d'autres. Donc, il y a des livres, si vous voulez acheter des livres ou regarder à quoi ça ressemble, vous pouvez aussi faire un don si vous voulez. Nous, on s'est déjà occupé de l'orateur, mais si vous voulez contribuer de manière directe ou indirecte, ça nous fait plaisir. Sinon, on vous tiendra informé quand il y aura une autre conférence comme celle-là. D'accord? Donc, soyez bénis. Vous êtes tous en train de dormir? Donc, je répète, allez regarder ce qui se passe. Il y a des dépliants, il y a des choses qui sont gratuites. Dès qu'on dit gratuit, on va tous aller là-bas. Mais il y a d'autres choses aussi intéressantes pour pouvoir s'équiper. Donc, soyez bénis. Et les pasteurs attendent des rapports écrits de ceux qui étaient là. Soyez bénis. Amen.